Thanks everyone for making the time to join us. We hope and pray, this session will touch your heart, or maybe even, you might think of somebody who can benefit from our book, from what we are saying. And you'll be able, if somebody, couldn't come today, you can even share the recording in the future. And we pray, right from the beginning, God's presence to guide us till the end. And we are so glad you can all join us. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So we have Steve Schultz joining us in a few minutes here, and he's going to share a little bit some insights into marriage. And he was particularly impacted by the book, and so we're going to get into a little bit of just some of the key takeaways. But guys, where can people get the book if they do want to get their own copy, or if they're not lucky enough to win in the draw tonight? Where else can they get their copy of The Unbreakable Marriage?
Okay. So right now, the book is available on any Amazon outlet, any Amazon like .com, .ca, .in, .sg, wherever you are located. Just go to the Amazon that you normally order from in your country, and you'll be able to access all three versions: Kindle, paperback, and hardcover. So in a couple of weeks, it'll also be available on sites like Barnes and Noble, Indigo, Chapters Indigo for Canadians, and some of the other book retailers, and will eventually show up on your bookshelves, bookstores rather. And so right now, Amazon is it. And so just click it. And by the way, if you do get the book, if you order the book, and then like take a picture of yourself with it and post it online for us. We actually have a Facebook page for the Unbreakable Marriage book. And so you can just search for the Unbreakable Marriage book, and you'll see a picture of the book as well as our smiling faces. And and we'd love to have you post. And also one of the things all authors need for their books to get around, for people to find out about it, is reviews. And so once you order the book, reviewed it, run through it rather, then please post a review, an honest review. It doesn't have to be 5-star from everybody, although we would love to see that. But if there are some things that you thought we could have improved on, just be open and honest about it. But we love to have reviews, because reviews are in some ways the lifeblood of book distribution and publicity for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I was looking on the Amazon site today, and there's a couple of reviews that have come in already. Some really glowing endorsements. Do you guys have a copy of the book nearby? Why don't you show people what this thing looks like so that when they go online, they know what they're looking for? Look at that. There, you can bring it right in close. The Unbreakable Marriage, and great cover, and so you can pull it back a little bit there, Mom. But you guys can see now. This is what it looks like. And what I'd actually do, just while we're waiting here, here are a couple of the testimonies that have already come in for people who have had a copy of the book. This one's pretty long, so I'm not going to read through all of it. But let me just read the first paragraph here. The Unbreakable Marriage is a guidebook to help any marriage that is struggling, but also to strengthen an already good marriage. It provides practical, easy to follow steps that a couple can implement immediately to make a difference in the way they are able to relate in their relationship. You don't have to read the whole book to understand how to start. One can begin adopting the recommendations right away from the very first of the book and add layers of improved communication, problem solving, troubleshooting, and other helpful tools as they are introduced and explained in the later chapters. So it's one of the genius parts about the book and the way you guys wrote it is that it does give people a chance to get started right away. They don't have to wait until they're chapter 3 before you start giving practical things. They can get going right away, and that's a tremendous blessing. A really good way to kind of get the ball rolling. And I'm going to read one more review here, and then we'll move on to our next part of the launch party. This was from someone who chose to stay anonymous, but they said this book is truly a blessing to anyone who's at the breaking point in their marriage or would just like to strengthen the marriage that they already have. The principles and guidelines presented by Jeeva and Salojana work. If you are willing to put in the effort and do the precepts laid out in this book, you will indeed find yourself changing, and your spouse too. The things that Jeeva and Salojana share that has helped their marriage will be a big blessing in your marriage. Thank you both for giving us the tools to improve and change the destructive behaviors in our marriage. So you guys are getting something that's really practical, something you can implement right away. And a lot of people say that knowledge is power. I personally don't believe that myself. I believe that knowledge is potential. It is knowledge with action where true power lies. And so when you get a resource like this that is forcing you to take action, forcing you to actually apply what you learn, that's when you can become powerful again in your marriage and really restore things. So it's called The Unbreakable Marriage. It's available on all major platforms. And what we want to do now is we want to welcome Steve Shultz from the Elijah List, who's joining us here for a little bit. And he managed to sneak in a few minutes just to come on and to talk a little bit about his experience of the book. Steve, we're so glad you're here. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're muted.
Yeah, I
Steve.
think you're muted there. Do you want to just hit your mic? Bottom left-hand corner, you should have a button there.
Is that better?
That's much better. Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
I was reading your lips. I think you said it was good to be here, but nice to have you here, Steve.
Yeah, nice to be here. I'm very much enjoying it. Haven't been out to Canada for a few years now, so it's good to see you again, Jeeva.
Yeah,
And
great to see
you remember
you.
how to say your wife's name?
Salojana.
Yeah, the C like that. What she said.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Good to see you.
Yeah, well, we're so glad you're here, Steve. And for those of you who don't know Steve, Steve was like one of the pioneers in online ministry, started the Elijah List long before having an online ministry was a cool thing to do. I imagine it was a little bit lonely at the time, Steve, but you've really pioneered something quite special. And you guys are reaching millions of people a year. I think I saw it was about 1 million different people every 90 days, which is absolutely remarkable.
Yeah.
And you were kind enough to read through the book. You got an early copy, rather, of the manuscript. And, given the line of work that you and your wife are in, you've done your share of marriage work yourself, counseling couples, and I imagine you and your wife have worked through things yourself also. And you had some really kind things to say about the book, and I'm going to read it in a little bit. But I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about your own marriage. How long have you been married? And what are some of the things that you've learned along the way, Steve, to having a successful marriage?
Well, as of June, Doreen and I have been married 44 years. So
Wow.
if you had asked me back then what it would be like in 44 years, I'm not even sure if I believed I would be alive, but age is different when you're young. You don't see that. But after 44 years, I can honestly say that Doreen and I have remained best friends all the way through. And it doesn't mean that a marriage doesn't have highs and lows. There are high times and lower times, but the lower times draw you to the Lord. And I think some of the things that have kept us together is from the very beginning, when we first started dating, most people wouldn't guess this, that 10 weeks after we were, let's make sure I get this right. Yeah, 10 weeks after we first took our first date, we were engaged.
Wow.
And then additional 10 weeks after that, we were married. So what we did is we felt led. I don't remember, I was trying to tap into that today. I don't remember how, or I think I probably took the lead and I said, why don't we start praying together? I think somehow we both knew we were ready when we had met each other. So we started praying together. And from that day to this, 44 years later, we pray together every night and often during the day as well. But we end up every day praying together. And then one night it'll be my turn to pray as we go to sleep. The next it's her turn, that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
just even when it becomes rote, from time to time, it'll become real. You go, I'm so tired. I don't know. But we said we'd pray together. So whose turn is it? And then whoever's turn it was. Even sometimes when it's rote, the machinations, the machinery, if you say, of prayer is already in place, and we've kept it in place. So no matter whether it's a high time or low time, we know we're going to pray. Whether we're really tired or not tired, we know we're going to pray. And God really is faithful to that. We've raised 3 children. They're all adults, all married, all homeowners, all serving the Lord. But I can only attribute that to prayer. I think Doreen and I have remained best friends. Like I mentioned that earlier, we discovered early on that once we got in the car to drive somewhere, that was kind of a thing for us, that once we were in that box of that car, she would talk or I would talk, and we would just begin to discuss everything, anything about our lives.
Wow.
And I remember for the first day, Doreen's quite an introvert. If you guys have met her, but if you've seen Doreen, she's very quiet. And by the way, that's one of the things about marriage is, she could sit here with me and smile, but she really prefers not to be on camera. I could say, Doreen, could you just go ahead and sit here? But in honor of her, she just doesn't really like to be on camera. So that's one of those marriage things that I've learned to listen to her. What are her desires? But anyway, we learned early on to talk, especially when we were in the car, that started happening. She, being the introvert that she is, I didn't realize to the degree how much of an introvert she was. I just started being myself. So I would just draw her, tell me about this, or what did you do in this party? And I didn't realize that I was the first person in her life that had ever done this to her, with her. So I found out later that she went back, like after that first date, she went to the hospital where she worked as a nurse. She didn't know my mother was the night supervisor at the hospital.
Okay.
So she's telling her friend, who went right to my mom and said, he doesn't know it yet, but I'm going to marry him.
Oh,
It's
wow.
after, but we just found out we just talked, we enjoyed life. And so I would say that's a real big part of our prayer and friendship. And, when you do friendship first, then the sexual relationship is very good. When the sexual relationship is very good, then friendship increases.
Yeah.
It's a cyclical thing. I'll just say this real quick. We did a couple, 5 or 6 years ago, believe it or not, we went to a marriage retreat just because someone twisted our arm. And I thought, well, I don't know that we need help, but we went ahead and did it. And it was the whole thing on that was about the sexual relationship. And I thought, well, okay, let's go and see what. But from that time, by that time, we were married almost 40 years. And I can just tell you that even from someone that's married that long, that our sex life is now better than it has ever been. And I'm
Wow.
60, I'm 67. So it can just get better and better.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think it's a good thing to be reminded of is that there's always ways to improve, and you may have thought you've heard everything, but there's always more.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you something a little bit more specific, Steve. I think one of the things that we've been surprised by is to find out that the divorce rate, which we know is high generally speaking, really doesn't change when you get into the church. And to take it one step further, it doesn't actually change even when you go amongst spirit-led believers, people who really have a value for hearing God's voice and the prophetic, signs and wonders and everything else. I remember for me, when I first discovered the Holy Spirit in my early 20s, I thought, this is great. Like, I'll never have to worry about anything ever again because I can hear God's voice. I can work through any problem. All my solutions are there. And of course, that's not quite how it works. We still run into challenges. And I guess I'm just curious, why do you think that is? Why is it that people who maybe would have all the security blankets in the world, whether it is confidence in the Holy Spirit, whether it's like, but we have so much in common and we like all the same things, or we have the same upbringing, or whatever it might be, why is it that couples still, regardless of those details, seem to run into issues and difficulties in their marriage?
I felt the same way when we became born again, and then we became spirit filled soon after that, and started experiencing the power of God. And I thought, this is going to be easy now.
Yeah.
I really thought that, because we're going to pray for the sick and they will recover. And my faith was soaring. And I found out that, I don't know if it's just because the enemy turns up the heat, or because he knows what you're thinking, or he's observed us for a few thousand years. He knows what we're thinking. I wish I had a simpler answer, except that when Jesus said, you're going to take up your cross daily and follow me, he didn't say, unless you become spirit filled, in which case you'll not have to take up your cross daily and follow me. He didn't say that. So it's, I thought it was almost a simpler solution for walking the spirit filled life. And in some senses it is, because when you get stuck in either a rut or you get in a crisis, you do have more to draw on. A spiritual life has more to draw on if your understanding of who God is, the Father's love, the power of the Holy Spirit. You do have more to pull you back out of that miry pit, if you will, the miry clay. But yeah, it's not a end all be all to be filled with the Holy Spirit. You still have to die daily. We all do. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I know one thing my parents emphasize in their system as well is, that relationship with the Holy Spirit covers your spirit part of it, but we're still people with souls, and there's wounds of the soul. There's issues that lie there that need to be remedied. And of course, that's where the Holy Spirit is so valuable, because he can obviously help us in that realm as well. But it certainly takes some work and some effort. Steve, I want to read what you said about the book. I was quite struck by it. And then I'm wondering if maybe you can just talk a little bit about your experience of it, and if there's anyone in particular, any kind of demographic that may come to mind that you would recommend the book for. Let me just read this through really quick.
Go ahead.
The Unbreakable Marriage is perfect. What we mean, having done marriage counseling for other couples, is that this book seems to have it all. Simple enough that couples in their 20s could easily grasp each concept, comprehensive enough that those married for only 1 year or for 40 years could each glean new and marriage healing information from, and advanced enough that those at a university could use the same book while receiving college credits. This book is for pastors, parishioners, home groups, marriage healing groups, or just the curious couple about to be married who truly seek a roadmap for marital happiness and even married bliss. Get this book, and while you're at it, buy one for a friend too. So a glowing endorsement, Steve. And I guess I'm just curious, was there anything in particular that jumped out from the book, or any particular people in mind that you think really need to get their hands on this?
I mean, all those groups that I listed, because I was in all of those groups. I've been a pastor. I've been a parishioner. I've been a newlywed. I've been in my 20s. We were married in our 20s, and I could just say that, first of all, I know Jeeva, and I can't say your name.
Salojana.
Salojana. So sorry, Salojana.
There, you got it.
There we go. Yeah, and I mean, I think what it was that I know their hearts. I've gotten to know them a little bit, and I know from where they come that I read the book. So I mean, I did have the cheat factor that I already knew their hearts. Then I read this book. That these guys have walked the walk, they talk the talk, they've raised a family. When people of that age speak, and when they write, and when they give you assignments in that book, you need to do those assignments. When they give you notes to write, you need to take notes there. When they tell you from experiences, it's very good about telling stories about couples and themselves, and all of those different areas. This is a trustworthy, I was trying to say, is it a workbook? Is it a primer book? It's kind of like a textbook. It's a workbook. It's a how-to. It's a storybook. It's all of those things. That's why they fit everywhere. I think it'd be great in home group settings or marriage group settings to sit around and talk about the concepts that are there.
Fantastic. Really appreciate that, and totally agree. It's definitely been one of the threads in the feedback, the reviews on Amazon, and the people that did get a chance to read the advanced reader's copy. Is it's really practical, and I think we know that's really what's necessary. I think a lot of marriages do fail because people just aren't willing to do the work, and take those practical steps, or maybe they just don't know what that is. And so the book will help with that. Steve, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for your time. Do you have any final parting words here for? Yeah, go ahead.
I'll just say what you said here is that you got to be willing to do the work. You don't get through 44 years in our case without having to re-examine your priorities now and then and say, am I or are we forgetting some of the basics? So we went through periods where we didn't go on dates, and then we went through seasons where we did go on dates again, and we realized that dates are better than no dates. Dates are better than no lunches. Going out is better than not going out, as long as you try to get out once a week or so. And sometimes I get sloppy and I don't take Doreen out, but it's important to take your beloved out and have private time alone. When the kids, we even had to try to do that. It was harder when you had kids, but yeah, I really recommend be willing to do the work. That was a great line there, because it takes work to keep a marriage going. And this is a great book for that. It's really a great book.
That's amazing. Amazing. Steve, thank you so much. Mom, Dad, you guys want to say something real quick?
Yeah, Steve, we really appreciate you taking the time to come on. And we've, when we met you in person, when you came to Canada, there was a connection between us, and with the grace of God, we've been able to maintain that connection, with conferences where we are together, and of course now electronic communication and so on. And we really appreciate you going through the book and writing us that great review, and then sharing even today, from your heart. So thank you very much again for your time. We appreciate it very much, and hope to see you again soon.
Thanks a lot. God bless you guys all. We'll see you later.
Thanks, Steve. Take care.
Bye.
That's awesome. So that was Steve Shultz, founder of the Elijah List, which is reaching literally millions of people every single month, and millions of new people every few months. So really just an honor to have him here. And we want to thank those of you who have tuned in since we started interviewing Steve. In case you don't know, This is a celebration of the launch of the Unbreakable Marriage. My parents are Jeeva and Shaloma Sam. They're the authors of the book. They were pastors for several decades. They have helped many couples heal through marriages long before they were doing this formally. And they themselves have been married for 39 years this month. They're gonna hit the big 4-0 next year, so that's amazing. And so just leagues of experience here that have all been poured into this book. It's an incredibly valuable resource, and we want you to get a copy of it. And obviously, you can get it on all major platforms, but we're giving you a chance to get a free copy today. And all you have to do is comment on this video. That's all you have to do. You could just write the letter X, and we will submit you to win a free copy of the book. We would love to hear a bit more than that. And actually, what we're asking you is to write where in the world are you tuning in from. We'd love to hear that, and just to know where are you joining from. And if you want to get a couple more shares, maybe you're like me and you really like free stuff and you just want to maximize those odds, you can share this video. And by sharing it onto your timeline, you're going to do two things. First of all, you're going to get an extra 3 votes, or you're going to get 3 votes in total, rather, for the draw. So you're going to increase your odds a little bit. But the second thing you're going to do is you're actually going to give other people a chance to get their hands on a resource that could literally change their marriages and change their lives in the process. And so that's what this is really about. It is about the book, but the book represents hope for those broken marriages out there that are struggling, and it represents healing, for the hearts that are broken and that are hurting from disconnect in a marriage. And so you get a chance to do all of that, and all you have to do, it all starts by just writing a comment, or like I mentioned, you can share this on your timeline or share this with some people that you know are going to benefit from it. So the next thing that we have lined up here is my lovely wife, who is right beside me. She is going to just help read a little bit from the book. Now this is Shaloma, and Shaloma and I have been married for almost 3 years. And it's funny, I was meeting with a couple mentors of mine this morning, and one of the things that they said is, it doesn't matter what book you've read, it doesn't matter what podcast you've listened to, how good your teaching was in the church when you grew up. The reality is, when you get married, you will naturally conform or gravitate to the patterns that you grew up with in the home, the example that you saw of your parents. And I'm not a husband, or I'm not a perfect husband yet. I'm working on that, but I've done okay, I think, in my first 3 years, and I'll let Shaloma decide how true that statement is. But I know that any success I've had in my marriage so far, I can attribute to my parents. They set an incredible example. And often with my brother and my sister, we will often just talk about how fortunate we were to have them as parents. We have a lot of friends who unfortunately have gone through divorces themselves, or they've watched their parents go through divorce, or in many cases, both. And every single time is a reminder of us, just of the grace of God in our family, and the gratitude that we have for our parents and the example they set for us. And so it's fun that my wife and I get to be part of this a little bit tonight, to celebrate the book and to really say that that this stuff works, and these guys really do walk the walk. They practice what they preach, and that was true when we were kids, and it's true now when we see them at home. Sometimes we laugh because when I watch my parents, I realize I'm just looking in a mirror. Our couple dynamics are very similar in a lot of ways, and so we have lots to laugh about and lots to learn still from them. But this is my wife Shaloma, and she's gonna take it away here and read a little bit from the book.
A little bit. Oh, perfect. This fancy little microphone. Well, hey guys. I hope everyone's enjoying the live so far, and it's honestly just such an exciting day because, like, it's just a day to release a book is huge, and I just want to say, Mom and Dad, I am so proud to be in your family, proud to be your daughter-in-law, because you guys already, in the almost 6 years that I've been with Sathiya for 6 years, but I guess 5.5 years that I've gotten to know you, I just have learned so much from you both as individuals and as a married couple, just seeing the way you guys interact with each other, and even from reading the first draft or first version of the book, just felt like I learned so much, which I'm gonna get into a minute. But I actually wanted to say something based on what you said, was about the fact that your parents have been married for 39 years, and how that is such a huge pillar for you in our marriage, and that having that commitment, the fact that they've been through ups and downs and they stayed together. You know, I'm sure they faced moments where they were probably like, I'm done, you know, who knows? I don't know, but it happens, right? After 39 years. And
Yeah.
it just made me think of my parents who went through a lot in their marriage. They had a son who had severe mental health challenges and even faced the death of a son, and yet through it all stayed together. And I think it's been about 35 years that they've been together. And so it's just a testament of, you know, commitment, and like that no matter what you go through, that this is a commitment you guys made, and that you can find ways to work through things. And anyways, it's just like amazing to think, like, I'm so blessed that we both have seen examples from our parents, of just what true commitment looks like. And yeah, so I just wanted to say that. But I wanted to read just a quick excerpt from The Unbreakable Marriage by Jeeva and Shaloma Sam, available now on Amazon. So I wanted to read from chapter 6, just a small portion, and then I'm just going to quickly just share a little bit about how when I read this in the original like draft that they had sent us a long time ago, how it actually really impacted me, and made a difference in the way that I approached our marriage, and specifically in dealing with conflict. So the chapter is called Restoring Peace Following Conflict. And it says, conflict is inevitable. Every marriage has its share of conflict. By itself, conflict isn't bad. It is actually a sign that you're communicating openly with each other. However, times of conflict can turn ugly when we allow our emotions to dictate our actions. Quite often, when you are in the middle of a heated argument, you are likely to say and do things that you might regret later. After this, it becomes more difficult to work through the hurt. In times like these, when you begin to feel your blood boiling, your temperature rising, your palms sweating, your body shaking, or whatever other symptoms that signals to you that you're headed for a blowout, here is what you can do. Call a timeout. This is very similar to timeout that gets called in the middle of a game. Sometimes coaches call one when they can sense that letting their team continue playing would be detrimental to the outcome, either because of physical or mental fatigue, or if they are not sticking to their game plan. Which is, I just think that's just such an amazing practical tool. They go on to talk more about in detail about the analogy of a sports team and how a timeout can benefit a sports team, and then relating it to a married couple. And then they continue to say to give you practical tips on how to actually overcome that and how to restore peace back after going through a conflict. We will lead you through a 3-part process that will ultimately result in restoration of peace, whether you had to endure a blowout or an uneasy calm. This process follows the spirit-soul-body connection that we discussed at the outset of this book. Here is the picture as a reminder. They give a little flow chart, which is actually really good. Number 1, begin in the spirit realm, asking and receiving forgiveness from God first, then privately release forgiveness for your spouse. Number 2, next move to the soul realm where you face your spouse in person. That's the hard part. Actually, the forgiveness part's hard too. It's all hard. Why did we do this again? Kidding. Admit the hurt you caused. Acknowledge the feelings aroused by it and ask them to forgive you. Number 3, finally, involve both the soul and the body realm in coming up with a written plan to ensure that the issue behind the conflict is dealt with constructively. And they go on to give their own personal examples, which is amazing. And I wish I had time to read it all out because I was kind of laughing and having a good time reading this. But I just, when I read that for the first time and even reading it a second time around, I just felt so encouraged by it because 1, it made me realize, wait, we're not the only couple that goes through that. You know, here it is that our, parents who have been married for 39 years, like, go through that. And so then I feel less alone and I feel like, okay, this is actually we're not in crisis if we're struggling with this, and that we can work through it. But the portion for me personally that I realized that I needed to work on was two things. Number one was I didn't like the concept of a timeout, because a timeout meant that we're gonna be apart whilst, you know, still angry. There's gonna be longer disconnection. What if it lasts for days and we need to just solve the issue now? We just need to finish. And that's how I grew up. I grew up seeing when we would have conflict in our family and with my parents, that's how we would just keep going until it was resolved and everyone was happy again. But usually it ended up being, you know, heated, and sometimes it's actually better to pause, to stop, to let the emotions come down, relax a bit. You can think clearer, and then you realize, you know what, it's not that bad. Like, let me just humble myself and apologize. You know what I mean? And so Sathiya actually would always recommend doing that. And then finally I said, okay, I guess we'll give it a try. And I realized every time we did that, it was so much better to come back together and resolve things. So we actually did do that part relatively well. The part that I realized that from reading the book that helped me that we didn't do was the forgiveness portion. We would forgive after we had come together, you know, we acknowledge each other's feelings and emotions, and then we forgive when they say sorry to each other. But what you guys are teaching us is to forgive even before you have the discussion, to just go by yourself with Jesus and forgive, and even though they haven't even apologized yet. And I'm like, but he's wrong. And so I've not mastered it yet, but on many occasions when I've gone and I'm still upset, I go by myself and I just release forgiveness. I process the emotions, and then I come back. I'm in a far better place to deal with it, and the reconciliation portion is just a lot easier, because I found when we hadn't done the forgiveness portion before, sometimes it would create even another blow up, and then we're now on to day 2 of solving this issue, and it's just not fun. So right, you can attest to that.
I can, yeah.
And so I just wanted to read that portion because I felt like it's just such a practical tool, such practical tips for something that I think most relationships deal with, and for us personally, that's something that has really helped us. So yeah. So thanks, Mom and Dad.
Yeah, and I think it's a good testament of the practicalities of this book. And I can attest that, you know, the 2 times we've had conflict in our 3.5 years of marriage, that it has definitely worked. More like probably the 2 times a week. Well, there's maybe not. I don't know. I don't know what our frequency is, but it's helpful. We'll just put it that way. It's a helpful tool, and we definitely recommend it. So what we want to do is we want to interview the authors. We want to hear from the writers of this brilliant resource. And so that's what we're going to do next. One last reminder, if you do want a free copy of the book, all you have to do is comment on this live stream. You literally just have to write a comment below. Tell us where you are tuning in from. We would love to hear it, and that'll submit you for a draw to win a copy of The Unbreakable Marriage. And if you want a couple extra votes rather, all you have to do is share this. If you share this with anybody, we will make a note of it, and that will count for 3 votes or 3 submissions into the draw. So you can comment, you can share, you can do both, and that's a really easy way for you to get your hands on this incredible resource, The Unbreakable Marriage, which is available on all major platforms. So, guys, here we are. Congratulations. You guys are officially authors. And this is super exciting. It's been fun for me personally because I also had the privilege of launching a book this year, and we've been able to exchange stories and talk about, you know, the process and who did you hire for this, who did you hire for that, and just kind of, you know, we're both learning the ropes as first-time authors, and so it's been really neat. The advantage I had was I didn't have to write this book with my wife. That was a huge plus. Because I can pretty much guarantee you we would be on chapter 2 right now if we were working on this thing together. And so the fact that you guys were able to write a book together alone is a testament to the quality of the marriage you guys have built these 39 years. But I want to get into the writing of the book, but I think it's really important to set the stage a little bit because you guys have had a solid marriage like we've obviously been talking about, but not a typical story for how two people come together, certainly in a Western nation. And Steve Schultz was talking about how he and his wife, they were engaged after 10 weeks, which is crazy. And not to make this a competition, but you guys have him beat by about 9 weeks. So just give us a little bit of background here on how you guys met and how your marriage came to be in the first place.
Yeah, so ours was an arranged marriage. Most of you must have heard that term, arranged marriage. So ours was truly happened. Yeah. So first of all, the families come together, and then the parents talk. So usually the families or relatives, make recommendations that so and so's family is looking for a husband or for a wife, and then that's how the parents come together. Or there are marriage brokers, who do this for a living, and that's how our families were brought together. And our parents met, and they talked about different things, and they thought, yeah, maybe this might work. And then we got to meet for 15 minutes.
A very, very long courtship by Indian standards.
Yeah, that's right. In those days, that was a long interview that my
you guys had to negotiate those 15 minutes, right? Because that was atypical in those days.
Exactly, especially Slojan's dad was very strict about these things, and so he didn't see any need for it. So the parents found that we were going to have a good marriage together. So, like, what's the big deal? Why do you kids need to talk to each other first? But of course, I was already I had already been in Canada for 7 years by that time, and so I had some Western influence in there, and the whole concept of just marrying somebody without talking to them, even if it was for a few minutes, just like that wouldn't sit well with me.
Yeah.
So I had to do it, and thankfully he agreed to it. And
yeah, I'm glad we did.
Yeah.
I like the questions you asked too.
Yeah, we could save some of those questions for another live stream because I know there was some dishonesty in some of the answering, and I don't want to put you guys on the spot and exploit you here.
Yeah, the book has the whole story.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, that's right. The book has the story. But the one thing, and I guess maybe to answer the question fully, it was, I guess, about 10 days, right? From that 15-minute conversation to tying the knot, officially being husband and wife was 10 days altogether, right?
That's right, yeah. Sorry, we didn't answer your question properly.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, it was 10 days by the time we got married because Jeeva came there on vacation for 6 weeks, and we just had 2 weeks left. You had 2 weeks left. So it took my dad, I think, a few days, and then your parents were asking, have you guys decided? So, and then my dad said, yeah. And once he said yes, and he talked to me also and said yes. It was within 10 days we were engaged. Engagement is another big party that was done. And then within a week we were married, and
Yeah, just so those who are not familiar with the arranged marriage, in our case, like both of us had veto power. So if either of us had said to our parents, don't think so, for whatever reason, then we would not have been, married. Like they would not have forced us into this marriage. But having an opportunity to do a little bit of sharing ahead of time was definitely a bonus.
Yeah. And of course, we prayed. I prayed, and
I fasted.
Yeah, he's lying.
Sorry, I feasted and you prayed.
Yeah, for God to lead my dad to the right person, make the right choice. And it should be his choice. And so it worked well for us. We are married, like Sathiya said, for 39 years in a couple of weeks.
And it just goes to show you, we were talking about this the other day because we met when online dating was starting to become more normal, but we both had made secret pacts in our just with ourselves that, you know, if I couldn't meet anyone in the next 3 years, or I think for Shaloma it was about 6 or 7 years, then we would try online dating. And you know, it didn't come to that point for either of us. But now every wedding we go to, pretty much the couples have met online. And it's amazing because it seems like, you know, the methods continue to change, but ultimately it is really God who ordains marriage and orchestrates the meeting of people. And obviously he knew what he was doing, you know, and in a 15-minute conversation, you guys were able to figure out that this was workable. And then you started on your journey, and here we are, you know, 39 years later. You guys are coaching people around the world, helping couples recover from, you know, being on the verge of divorce to being happily married again, expanding their family, stepping further into their callings and destinies, and now launching a book. And it's absolutely amazing. And I know more of your stories in the book, which that in of itself is reason enough to get it. But one question I wanted to ask just before we start talking about the book a bit more specifically is, how would you guys define commitment? Because I think when you are getting married that way, the way you guys did, where you're saying yes to a person before you really get to know them, that's very different than what commitment means here in a Western nation, where it's like all of the ducks are in a row. Most couples these days are moving in together and they're setting up their life to really make sure they're just compatible on every single front before they actually pledge their vows. And it's a little bit inverse that way, although most people would hear your story and say, no, that's inverse. That's what's so extreme. But what does the word commitment mean to you guys? And is there anything from your story that we can extrapolate and apply in a Western context?
Yeah, for me, growing up in my family, we were told there's no such thing as divorce. The word divorce is not in our dictionary. So that's how we grew up that's the climate. And so when my dad did all the arrangement and everything, we have seen it work, arranged marriages work for our relatives, family members. And so I knew in my heart, if we make that commitment and know with God's help, we can work it all out, no matter what comes our way.
Yeah.
And so that's how, I walked into the marriage.
Yeah, because ultimately love is a choice. Love is a decision that you make. If you just live your marriage out on the basis of how you feel, then you're not likely to going to get too far. And so, like, we sometimes like to say that when you get married, you say I do once, but then you keep on saying I will make this work. I will stick with him. I will not leave. And so you say that hundreds, maybe thousands of times, because that's where the marriage is actually plays out.
Yeah.
In keeping that the choice that you made, and of course in our because of the Christian faith, it's like with our vows are always, as long as we both shall live, not as long as we both shall love. And so that's part of the commitment that we make. So death us do part, as the old vows would say.
Yeah.
So the thing is, and again, as Logan said, because we had seen this as a very normal way of life, in our family, in our culture, then we knew that we didn't have to fall in love first, because we were going to grow in love as we got to spend more time with each other, got to know each other. So the first few years are really in some ways a courtship phase. Yeah. Only thing is, there's a pregnancy that gets in there somewhere. Raising a child and everything else.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of adjustment there.
Yeah. And also, I also feel like being the right person. Sometimes, you feel like, oh, I wish he changes, in this area, whatever. But, you can also ask yourself, where can I change? How can I be the best wife? That's how, the first few years I kept on asking that. Sometimes you feel like, there are times in the beginning, I felt like, did we, is he happy with me? Did we marry the right person? Those kind of things, run through your mind. But, I just, sometimes, you just ask God, where do I need to change, Lord, to be a better wife? So, start changing within you and work on yourself. and the other person will come around, will work. And
Yeah, I think in the Western culture, we have a lot of emphasis on marrying the right person.
yeah,
So that's why we feel like we have to date quite a few before we find that right person. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter, we break a few hearts along the way. That's just the price we have to pay. Like that's kind of the way we justify it. Whereas, when you come out of our context, and I don't think it's not just our context, I think it's for everybody. You have to realize that marriage is not about finding the right person. It is about being the right person for the one that you found and chose to marry.
Yeah.
And so it's something that especially when you start living in close quarters, all sorts of differences, will start, cropping up
Yep.
that you never ever saw, in your courtship phase. And so, yeah, you have to learn how to adjust, how to realize the uniqueness that your spouse has. And
Yeah, that's really good, guys. There's a lot of wisdom. I think people should just probably replay those last 5 minutes. A lot of wisdom in there, and I think it's a really good point, Mom, what you were saying, which is like if you're committed in your heart, then you no longer have a right to wait for the other person to change. When you made that commitment, it means that when you run into issues, it's on you to change. That's the only thing you can control. And I think that's where a lot of marriages actually start to probably veer off course. I can just imagine if divorce is an option and you haven't made that commitment fully in your heart, then when you run into difficulties, you can wait for the other person to change and set up some of those stipulations that people often do that result in eventually, a divorce or certainly marital strain. So a lot of wisdom there, and this is all the more reason, guys, to get your hands on the book. This is the kind of stuff that you're going to learn as you read through it. Now, speaking of the book, tell us a little bit, how long did it actually take you guys from when you first started to where we are today?
I wish we could say, Sathiya, like 3 months, like you did. I think it took us 3 years.
Not quite.
No.
Slogan has a tendency to exaggerate sometimes.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, we have to say to you that like God had an idea in His mind that we needed to write a book together. And of course, when God has that, He often will reveal that to you, in what, in our circles we call prophecy, personal prophecy. So we've had like a number of prophetic people over the years, some well-known and some maybe not that well-known, who have told us that they saw the two of us writing a book together. And, I always had this thing that I would write a book, at some stage. But
I always thought it's too much work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we had that in the back of our heads that this is something that God really wants us to do. And then we actually started to get some coaching, for how we could expand the parameters and the influence of our mentorship.
Yeah.
Because our book actually came out of a marriage mentorship process that we developed. And the coach that we worked with, Sean Mize is his name, a good Christian man. And Sean said, you know what you guys are doing and the results you're producing is too good for the two of you to keep to yourself. Like you really need to share this, with the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And along the way, you will. There was also another reason that said, like you will become an authority, in this space, and so which is also good for your marriage mentorship. So like I'm not going to like somehow say that this was totally altruistic.
Yeah.
But there was that other, message there as well. And so at that point, because we knew the subject matter of, what we would write about, because we had already at that point, worked with couples for close to 4 years. And this process, had produced breakthrough for couples who are, facing breakdown. Yeah.
And, when it's in the book form, it can reach so many more people than us. Just the two of us working, the mentorship, you can only reach very few people through our mentorship. So that's another thing, I felt like God saying, this has the potential and, it will help many more marriages if if it's in the book form. Yeah. And then when the prophetic words came, that was confirmation. And I thought, okay, I guess we need to put in the work.
Yeah, so
And
really, if you look at a timeline, I think the first time, we really started seriously doing something about it was September of 2020. That's when I actually even started to like put that outline
yes,
together,
yes,
Yeah.
do some rough drafts. And as you know, when you write a book, there are times when it really flows, and there are times when you just can't get anything out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so Shaloma talked about reading an early version of the book. So that's one of the first things we did, was to get the book out to some readers to see if they understood what we were trying to say and to identify them sticky points or things that were not clear. So by the time we did that process and then rewrote and we worked with an editor, wonderful guy, Jonathan Puddle, and John picked up on certain things that he felt,
yes.
our book was a little weakened, so we had to go back and do more research. So it's been quite a process. It's been a learning process. And people who actually were our initial readers, when they get a copy of the book that is published, they will be very clear. They'll be able to tell this is not the book that we read. There's some
Yeah.
evolution and growth that has happened
Oh
in these
yeah,
people and in the
I'll
book.
tell you.
Yeah.
By
And
the
it's,
way,
oh, go ahead, man. Go
Shaloma,
ahead.
Shaloma did a good job in explaining that portion. You did very well. Yeah, you
Oh,
spoke
thank you.
from your own experience. Yeah, very well.
Yeah, definitely. The one thing I was going to say is you guys really were quite responsive to the feedback, which a lot of authors don't necessarily do. But you guys actually finished the first manuscript. Pud, I call him Pud, Jonathan Puddle. He told you guys actually you need to read he gave you a whole stack of books, didn't he, to read that he said if you read these, it's going to make your book that much better. And you guys actually took him up on it, and I think it reflects in the quality of the manuscript, the well-roundedness of the manuscript. Like Steve was saying, this is literally for everyone, whether you're married right now, you're divorced, or you want to get married again one day for the first, second, third time, whatever it is. This book is going to be really valuable because of that time you guys put in. And I think the other thing that's really amazing, we're talking about commitment and how many people had a good idea during COVID in September 2020 of writing a book or starting a project or trying to side hustle or whatever it was. But then now that we're back to normal, you don't hear anything about it. And you guys actually stayed true to the process. You finished the book and now you've released it, a true testament really to just the ethic, the obedience to the voice of the Lord. And that whole commitment thing, it's just a neat way that it's kind of showing up in a couple of different ways here. So we're hitting our hour mark, and if you haven't yet written a comment, please write it in the comments below. Let us know where you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you have any questions, you can ask them as well. We're not going to answer them today, but we're going to be doing some more live streams in the future, and Dad's going to talk about that in just a minute. So you can ask questions, and we'll be sure to answer those. But to get a free copy of the book today, that's the big promo, and all you have to do is write a comment below. One final question, guys. What are you hoping is going to come out of this book? You talked about it a little bit already, but I'm wondering if you can just drive it home. What would make this book successful for you guys?
Mm-hmm. Well, we didn't start out with this goal, but along the way, like we heard very clearly God saying, like I'm sending you on an assignment, on a mission to save 50,000 marriages from divorce in the next 5 years.
Wow.
And that was like a really overwhelming thought. And I thought, well, obviously we're not going to be able to do that on our own. And God's going to use the book to accomplish that. It's really interesting when Steve Shultz was talking about how he saw the book being used. He mentioned marriage healing groups or something along those lines. And so we see some groups doing it, but the vision that God really gave us for how this can multiply is for a young married couple to actually work with an older couple, in the sense that somebody who's been married longer, not that they have a perfect marriage, but because one of the elements that really has made our process work well for couples is accountability. And so if you stay accountable to someone for a short period of time, so generally speaking, we would recommend like 10 to 12 weeks, is really what it should take to work through the book. And there's also a workbook coming out, by the way. But when you work with the mentoring couple, then you're going to stick to it and get through the material. But in the process, you also develop a friendship with that couple. So one of the things that we want to do is we really want to partner with churches and ministries where, the leadership is open, to having that happen, because that's really the body of Christ. Like, we're all meant to be together in this. So you don't rely on the professionals alone,
Yeah.
to do all the counseling and the mentoring, because it doesn't happen. I pastored for 35 years. And honestly, I don't believe I did a very good job of preparing couples for marriage, because you couldn't build that kind of relationship with everyone that came to you for marriage.
Yeah.
The time.
Yeah, exactly. There's so
Yeah.
many other commitments.
Mhm.
Yeah. So why not use the resources that are already in there within the
Yeah.
body?
Yeah, and I know Shaloma and I can speak into that as well, like the value of having another couple in your life that's either, in some cases, we've had people that are a few years ahead, we've had some people that are way ahead, but being able to even just bounce questions off of them and hear about their experiences has been valuable. But then to be able to go through a resource together or to have specifics that you're working through, that's just gonna like put fuel on that fire and be incredibly valuable. And so if you're listening, you want to get married one day or you're in a marriage right now, it doesn't matter how good things are, this resource will be valuable. And I think where you guys have really shone and where your system clearly is effective is for those marriages that are actually struggling. There's strain, you're caught up in cycles, you've hit a wall, you've plateaued, you don't know how to move to the next level, whether the next level is just talking to each other again or it's taking things to, greater intimacy, greater connection, and whatever it might be. This resource is going to help you do that in strides. And so it's called the Unbreakable Marriage. It's available on all major platforms. And you have one last chance. If you comment in the next minute or two, just let us know where you're from. That's going to submit you for a free copy, and you can share this as well. The replay is going to be available. And this doesn't end today. We're actually going to continue to do some sessions. And Dad, I'm going to have you talk about that here just before we wrap it up.
Okay, so first of all, we're releasing the book on different platforms on a certain timetable. And so right now, the place where you get it is Amazon. So no matter which country you're watching from, you just have to go to the Amazon.com, CA, IT, DE, FR, whatever it is for your country. And you'll be able to download the Kindle version or get a copy of the paperback or the hardcover. And so, yeah. And when we felt that we didn't want to try and cram everything into one session. And we also have 3 children. And so we want to involve our family in this book launch process as well, and have the other 2 join us in later sessions with some other guests, because we have a number of wonderful leaders in the body that endorse our books. And we also have a number of couples that provided us with testimonials and reviews and so on. So we want to bring some of them on so that they can share their perspective on what they have read in the book, but also the ones that actually applied what's in the book before the book was ever written.
Yeah.
Yeah, to see how it was helpful to them.
Yes.
And so so every Tuesday night for the rest of the month of August, for sure, at 8 p.m. Eastern time, we will be doing a live stream. So yeah, we look forward to having you join us. And by the way, if there's some way that we can serve you, we can help you with your marriage. One of the things we offer is a free consultation. It's just because it's free, like it's not cheap. Like normally, if you wanted our time, it'll be $500 for that 1 hour consultation, because we really pack it with stuff that you can take home and apply. But we're willing to give it to you for free. So send us a message. You're on Facebook right now. Just click on Messenger and send us a message. Keep in touch with us. We have a Facebook group, a page rather, for our book called the Unbreakable Marriage book. We also have a community called the Unbreakable Marriage Community. And you can also, join us there. So there's ways that you can keep in touch with us. And so, yeah, we look forward to serving you in whatever way that we can.
Yeah, fantastic. And one last time, why don't you guys just show the cover there? And I think we're in speaker view here, so I'll let you guys talk for a minute, just so that while you're holding it up, people can see it. Just pull the book back a little bit, just so they can see it in full. Pull it back even more, so they can see it all. And there it is. Yeah.
And then you guys have to talk, because otherwise they're not going to see
Yeah,
it.
just talk
Okay,
so that
we
people
have
can
to talk. That's right, to get the voice activation. So yeah, here's the Unbreakable Marriage with Jeeva and Shultz Sam. And as you can see, the subtitle is How to Stand in Unity and Withstand Adversity. And that's really, Steve was talking about how in their marriage, they started praying together right from the get-go. Like
Yeah.
they were standing together in unity right from the get-go. And so 44 years later, they're still standing strong and have withstood adversity along the way.
Yes.
And so that's what we really want to help you do. So yeah, there we are.
There it is. Well, congratulations, guys. You're authors. That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
And thanks to all of you for tuning in. Appreciate it. And we'll be on here again next week, same time.
Thank you.
God bless. Bye-bye.